Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Today on the program, we are part of the Believe YouTube Podcast Network, and it should be noted that the SEC men's basketball tournament is going on. Congratulations to Kentucky, who beat 16th seeded LSU in the first round. Congratulations to Kentucky for making it to Thursday of the SEC men's basketball tournament. Also, I want to say this. Congratulations to Stillman, Hislop family friend Jelly Roll, on being inducted as a member of the Grand Ole Opry last night. Congratulations to Jelly Roll. Lindsay was there with all of the very, very proud folks at Broken Bow Records, BBR, BMG, all of them, so on and so forth. So congratulations to Jelly Roll. Okay. So there are two topics on the show today, and then I am going to get into your reactions. And hit the like, hit the subscribe. We're getting a lot of likes. We're getting a lot of subscribes. Hit the likes, hit the subscribes. There is the latest with the Trey Hendrickson, Max Crosby drama. And then there is a talk we have to have about Mike Borgonzi, at least how I feel. So first, we're going to do the Hendrickson talk, the Hendrickson, now Crosby talk. Then we'll do the Borgonzi talk. Then we'll hit your reaction at the end of the program. First, though, I am going to tell you about our presenting sponsor. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Hiller takes great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Hiller's been taking care of my home for years. They've been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work that Hiller performs, they'll make it right. You can learn more by visiting happyhiller.com. Professional, experienced, trustworthy technicians that come into your home and leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value, and they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins. And they know this because, or I know this because I use Hiller. They take care of the customer on every job, every time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face truck today. TDG says, salute to Jelly. Antioch, stand up. Yes, congratulations again to Jelly Roll. So how about last night? Holy shit. In a shocking turn of events, the Ravens last night backed out of the trade for Max Crosby. And as soon as they did, I felt it in my heart. You know, it's crazy. Yesterday on the program, I said if the Titans sign Trey Hendrickson, if they draft Jeremiah Love and they go get a right guard, I will not whine. I will not complain. I will not bitch. I will not moan. You can go get whatever ex-Giant or Jet you want to go sign. They signed a former 49er last night, a defensive tackle for Robert Saleh right there. Go get him another one of his guys. And so, great. You sign all the guys you want. You want to start Austin Schlottman or Dylan Parham at center? Fine, be my guest. Get me Trey Hendrickson, get me Jeremiah Love, and get me a right guard. You do whatever the hell you want. And as I cut the video up and put the tweet out last night, immediately I saw, I've got Schefter and the insiders all, notify on Twitter whenever they tweet. And I saw they're backing out of the Max Crosby deal. I thought, what the fuck? And let me say this. That is a big part of the reason that I just love the NFL. I do. I love this league. It never stops. Here we are in the middle of March. We don't have football for 5 months. And yet here is the drama. Now, the sad part is last night, I would have gone live last night with this because I was so enamored. And you know me, I'm a conspiracy theorist, so put the hat on. But I had a gummy last night, so now I'm gummified, and this happens. And as soon as it did, I said, oh, my God, they're going to go get Trey Hendrickson. And it's pretty obvious to me what happened. Mike Greenberg this morning wanted to make sure we're not accusing the Ravens of this. But Tom Pelissero said yesterday that teams around the league were telling him they are absolutely accusing the Ravens of this. The Ravens went to the combine. That's the illegal tampering period. And they went to the combine, and they were probably told that Trey Hendrickson wanted Danielle Hunter's $40 million a year. And so the Ravens looked at it and said, Crosby at $30 million a year or Hendrickson at $40 million a year, but we have to trade 2 first-rounders in order to get Crosby at $30 million a year. So then the legal tampering period opens up, and that Danielle Hunter money that Trey Hendrickson wanted at the combine doesn't exist anymore. And the Ravens sat there last night and they said, well, hold on, wait a minute. If the number for Hendrickson isn't Danielle Hunter's 40, but is actually closer to what Crosby makes, which is 30, and we get to keep our picks, let's do that. And they rescinded the trade. I was on Sirius XM Saturday morning, and I said, I do not understand. In fact, I think I've got it right here. I think I can show you. Here you go. So this was my little grid for Saturday morning on Sirius XM, and I don't think the camera can see, but it says, and it's crossed out, why not sign Trey Hendrickson? As one of the topics I had Saturday morning on Sirius XM. I'm like, I'd rather have Hendrickson in the picks than Crosby without the picks. And I think Crosby is just a slightly better player than Hendrickson. So to me, it was obvious. Again, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. The market for Hendrickson was not what Hendrickson anticipated. The Ravens realized we can pay $30 million for Hendrickson, which is the same cost Crosby is, and we can keep our 2 picks, just rescind the trade. And that's what they did. The Baltimore Ravens got their cake, and they got to eat it at the expense of the Raiders, but also the expense of Max Crosby. And there is no way the Ravens didn't know about Crosby's knee before this. Pro Football Doc was on our show last week when we asked him specifically about Hendrickson, and he said when it comes to a trade, the injury records are digitized. So, for instance, when the Titans went to trade for Jermaine Johnson, the Jets granted the Titans access to Jermaine Johnson's medical history so they could all look at it online and get an idea of what his status is. They knew. So I have a hard time believing that the Ravens doctors got in there and saw something that really made them squirm. And from a strategic standpoint, the Ravens, I think, played it great. From the standpoint of integrity, the Ravens did some real shady shit. Now, this is also the Baltimore Ravens, who employed Ray Lewis for 12 seasons after Ray Lewis was involved in a double murder and pled guilty to obstruction of justice. So let's not kid ourselves here. Again, this is the Ravens. It's not like this sort of shadiness is beneath the Ravens. Wouldn't make me want to do business with the Ravens, but it's not. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious when it comes to the Ravens how this all went down. And I heard this morning Schefter said they were talking to Crosby and Hendrickson about playing together. Sure. That being said, I do think the price is now lower when it comes to Max Crosby, which takes us to the Titans. My top target for the last 2 months for the Tennessee Titans is now off the board. It's a lot like last year. I spent 2 months banging the table for Sam Darnold, and then he went off the board. Hendrickson, I've been banging the table for Trey Hendrickson, and now he's off the board. And like with Darnold, because the money ended up coming in at less than I would have paid, I feel pretty certain I'd have both guys if I was general manager of the Titans. But I'm not. And for some reason, it feels like the Titans are always afraid of asking out the hottest girl. They never want to pay the top free agent. They just want to pay mid-free agents high-end money. And that's what they did 2 years ago, and it looks like that's what they're doing here. But when I saw the Ravens back out of the Crosby trade yesterday, and I had that knife go through my heart of why, it was because I knew immediately the Ravens are going to go sign Trey Hendrickson. the guy I desperately wanted. And they did. And so when it comes to the Titans, I now think that takes us to the Maxx Crosby discussion. And I keep looking at this football team like a general looking at the map of a battlefield. And there's just two things I can't get over. It's like I'm looking at this map of the battlefield and we've got all the lieutenants and the commanders in there. And I'm like, God, I just don't like our position here. And I don't like our defenses here. And the two things I just can't get over. Number one, the defensive line is incomplete. And number two, the offense lacks playmakers, touchdown scorers, guys with the ball in their hands that put it in the paint. Wan'Dale Robinson does not score touchdowns. Daniel Bellinger does not score touchdowns. Calvin Ridley is your top touchdown scorer. He averages 8 touchdowns over every 17 games of his career. But Calvin Ridley, for you, is the same as Wan'Dale Robinson. He scores on 3% of his targets. That's just not good enough. And so I look at the Titans and I keep thinking to myself, the defensive line is incomplete and the offense lacks a true go-to playmaker. And I think you and I both know you can solve one of those problems with the 4th overall pick. You could take who remains when you're picking at 4 between Arvell Reese, Ruben Bain, or David Bailey, and you could draft one of those 3 guys, and one of those 3 will at least be there. Now, I think 2 of the 3 will be there, and I mean, I kind of feel like the signing of John Franklin Myers kind of takes them out of the Ruben Bain market, and it's probably more Reese or Bailey. But again, one of those 2 guys will be there, or you can draft Jeremiah Love, the dynamic offensive piece that you don't have. But I think we all know you can't have both. There is not a world where you can have David Bailey coming off the edge or Arvell Reese coming off the edge and Jeremiah Love at running back. And this is where I want to caution everybody on why this is such an imminent issue right now. It's March, Jared. It's only the beginning of free agency. We still have the draft. There are still other players we can get. Because very quickly, March becomes what I call it'll be fine season. You know, the idea that the Titans spent all that money 2 years ago and didn't have a right tackle, but it'll be fine with Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, and Jalen Duncan. It'll be fine. And over the last 2 years, I've told you guys, every year in March, when you tell me it's not that big of a deal, it's only March. Every September, every October, I've had to remind you, these are problems that you fix in March. And what I loved about Trey Hendrickson was that he solidified the defensive line. Hendrickson, Franklin Myers, Swimmons, and Johnson. Good enough for me. 2 all-pro caliber players, 1 really good player in Franklin Myers, and a guy the coach believes in Jermaine Johnson. But now he's gone. It would have allowed you to sign Hendrickson and not have to give up any draft choices, and then you could just go take Jeremiah Love, and now you've checked both boxes. So what do you do now that Hendrickson is off the board? And when I say what do you do, I guess what I'm saying is what would I do? Because what I would do, I don't think is what the Titans are going to do. And so here's what I'll say. There is a path I expect the Titans to take. And then there is the discussion of why the Titans need to not take that path. And so you guys tell me where you want to start. In the chat, you tell me right now. Do you want to go and discuss the the path that I expect the Titans to take? or what the Titans could do to avoid the path that I think is going to set them up for a 4-12 season. Excuse me, a 5-12 season, a 4-13 season, a 3-14 season. Do you want to know the path I expect the Titans to take? Or do you want to know how they avoid that path? And which one you want to do first, that's the one we'll hit first. So, and I'm going to give you guys a couple of chance here to do this, but I'm getting very, very nervous. Okay. I think you guys say that, it looks kind of even. What Jared would do, the path you expect, do yours first. Okay, fine. We'll do that. I think the Titans should find themselves into the Maxx Crosby sweepstakes, if such thing exists. If the price was 2 first-rounders for Maxx Crosby, the reality is that can't be the price anymore. If the price yesterday was 2 first-rounders for Maxx Crosby and he flunked the physical, then that can't be the price today. The second thing is Baltimore's first-rounders and your first-rounders are not the same. Baltimore traded the 14th overall pick in a draft that ESPN says has 11 first-round graded players. That means Baltimore traded a second-round caliber player. And I think Baltimore expects that their pick next year will be 28 or 29 or 32. And so, again, that's probably more of a second-round player than it is a first-round player. So if I'm the Titans and I pick up the phone and I call the Raiders, and the Raiders say, well, 2 firsts, that's the deal. That's what we got for Baltimore. Their first-rounders and my first-rounders are not the same. My first-rounder is number 4 overall. What you got in the deal for Crosby, as far as the chart is concerned, was not as good as the 4th overall pick itself would be. So, again, he flunked his physical. What was yesterday's price, that is no longer valid. So, the Raiders have to understand that themselves. And I don't know if they could do that. I think the Raiders would have to get a second-rounder in this year's draft in order to justify trading Maxx Crosby. And again, that's where it would have to start. If I was being honest with you and I was saying, okay, what do I think it would legitimately take for the Titans to get Maxx Crosby? I think it would be the 35th pick in the draft and next year's number 2. I think if you're the Titans, you make the argument, hey, the 35th pick in the draft is going to be a second-round player. It's a sweet spot in this draft. I'm not giving you a 1 because I'm not giving you 4 overall. So I'll give you 35, and then you command the beginning of day 2 because they have a pick at the top of the second round as well. So now you've got 2 picks at the top of the second round. You can do whatever you want with those. And they're probably going to want a second-rounder next year. So the question then has to be, is Maxx Crosby worth giving away 2 top 60 players over the next 2 years? And I'm torn. I'm torn on whether or not I'd give away 2 top 60 players for Maxx Crosby. I would not give away the 4th pick for Maxx Crosby. He's 29 years old. Clearly he's injured, though I expect him to be fine. Clearly he's injured. And again, the trade blew up. So that's what I think it'll take. And I think the Ravens, once they saw that the price had dropped on Trey Hendrickson, said, hold on, wait a minute. We can get Trey Hendrickson and we can get our picks. Well, let's just do that. So again, for Crosby, I think it would be 2 second-rounders. 35 and next year's second. Would you do it? Maxx Crosby is a bona fide stud. If you sent 2 second-rounders to the Raiders, and maybe you'd have to throw in something that doesn't really matter, but they could argue has value the way Jet fans got their panties all wet over Tavondre Sweat, go ahead and throw Oladejo in there too. But would that be worth Maxx Crosby? He's 29. Simmons is 28. Franklin Myers is in the same age bracket. You've already paid for your corners. I think you overpaid for your corners, but you overpaid your corners, and you could still take Jeremiah Love. I'm torn, but I think I would do that. Now, here's what the Titans are going to do, or at least here's what I expect the Titans to do. I expect the Titans to use the 4th overall pick on one of these defensive players. Probably Bailey, maybe Reese if he's there. Again, I think signing Franklin Myers took them out of the Ruben Bain discussion. And it's either they're going to use the 4th pick on an edge, or they are going to go full on, it'll be fine with Femi Oladejo in that spot, who quite frankly, I think Femi stinks, and he may not be better than Jalen Harrell. But the idea of them getting an impact edge if they don't draft it at 4, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do it. So I know it'll be fine season is coming. And I hate it'll be fine season. Again, Nicholas Petit-Frere, it'll be fine. Jalen Duncan, it'll be fine. Last year, when I'm like, so what are they going to do for Cam Ward here to have a good team around him? Because you guys tell me that Cam Ward is a can't-miss prospect, but I've seen teams ruin quarterbacks who are rated higher than Cam Ward in the past. So what are they going to do to help out the young quarterback? Maybe they need to trade the picks because it'll be fine. We're going to unretire Warren Moon's number because it'll be fine. And I thought, oh, shit. And that's what's going to happen here. They'll either draft a guy, and then they'll have no offensive playmakers for Cam Ward outside of Wan'Dale Robinson, who's a 5'8" slot receiver and had one good season. Or they'll draft Jeremiah Love, roll with Oladejo, and say, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And that's what drives me crazy. And I hate the it'll be fine season. Oh. Phew. We drafted Femi Oladejo, Jared, with the 52nd pick. And I'm not talking about you, the fans. I'm talking about this is the way they'll look at it because they drafted him. You know, if J-Rob drafted him or if Rand drafted him, they would just say, oh, no, he sucks. But they drafted him, so they're going to say, hey, we drafted Femi last year with a 52nd overall pick. We really believe in Femi, even though he was god-awful last year, had 0 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, and a PFF rating of 48.2. We believe in him because we drafted him, Jared, and we don't need Maxx Crosby. And quite frankly, I hate both options. I hate the idea of trading picks, and I hate the idea of leaving Jeremiah Love on the board and not having a true dynamic playmaker for Cam Ward. That's the first topic. The second topic. The Titans are getting absolutely crushed in the land of public opinion with the moves that they have made. I know they've spent all the money, and everybody says, way to go, Titans, for spending all the money. But the Titans are getting crushed. The only person who seems to really laud what the Titans have done is Ryan Clark. And I thought Ryan Clark should have been fired. I actually texted Caroline's fiance, Dylan, a couple of days ago. It's just randomly thinking about the fact that Ryan Clark actually said that RG3 cannot talk about Angel Reese because RG3 married a woman who is white. Ryan Clark actually said that. And it had nothing to do with anything related to the Titans. I was just thinking about the fact that Ryan Clark said it. And I think Ryan Clark's crazy. So congratulations, Ryan Clark is the one person who thinks the Titans did well in free agency. They got crushed by the Athletics Football Show over the signing of Wan'Dale Robinson. They got crushed by Chad Forbes, NFL Draft Bites, for the signing of Cordell Flott. They got crushed by Sam Monson for saying, hey, let's just go get a bunch of Dable and Sala guys. And even Bill Barnwell at ESPN, goodness gracious, did he give the Titans the business? He lumped them with the Browns, which is never a good place to be in. But Barnwell wrote, quote, I don't mind the moves on defense. I'll start with the positive. When the Titans traded T'Vondre Sweat to the Jets, a reunion with Coach Robert Saleh and former Jets defensive tackle John Franklin Myers seemed inevitable. And he says, good about that. I can understand why the Titans prioritized Franklin Myers. Tennessee also needed help at corner, where moves for Snead and a bevy of draft picks haven't worked out. They signed two solid young players in Cordell Flott and Alante Taylor, both of whom have the ability to play above average football as they enter the peak of their careers. Saleh has done excellent work coaching up corners in the past, so there might be meaningful upside between what the Titans saw from these two players in New York and New Orleans. Adding one or two players, the coaching staff already knew made sense. Adding five seems a little much. In addition to Flott and Franklin Myers, the Titans made more curious moves on offense by riding with the Giants for tight end Daniel Bellinger, wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson, and offensive coordinator Brian Daboll added another piece from his past and Bills backup Mitch Trubisky, who comes in on a 2-year pact behind Ward. These offensive additions don't move the needle in the right way. Bellinger has failed to top 300 receiving yards in a season as a pro. He isn't a threat in the red zone, and he isn't the same caliber of blocker in the run game as players like Charlie Kolar or Charlie Warner. The Giants said, whatever. They crushed him. Barnwell crushed him. And let me just say this. I tend to agree with the assessment of the Titans free agent crop. Predictably, Titans Twitter is not taking this very well, but I do lean towards the side of the critics. And the reason why is because I'm really starting to lose my faith in Mike Borgonzi. I have a lot of frustration with what I've seen so far. My frustration is with Borgonzi, who now for the second offseason in a row as a general manager seems to just be all over the place. And I'm not necessarily sure that I see a plan when it comes to building the Titans. Mike Borgonzi took the job. And when he took the job, he said all the right things. And he seemed like somebody who had a serious plan. And I like that, especially when he talked about how the Chiefs did it by trading for Alex Smith and building the team up and striking on quarterback when they were ready. I said, great, this is a guy who is not going to overdraft Shedeur Sanders just because Dion wants them to, which I worried might actually happen. But then he overdrafted the best quarterback and subsequently put that quarterback in a horrible situation. I mean, when he took Cam Ward, he said, you got to have a plan for the quarterback. And then he put him in the single worst possible situation you could put a quarterback. Okay. Well, now Brian Callahan is gone and Chad Brinker isn't in charge anymore. So now it's really Mike Borgonzi's team. And again, he talked about the plan and he talked about building the roster. And he sounded competent when he did it. And then free agency opens. And he goes out and he signs corners and a slot receiver and a 19-catch tight end. And almost every single guy he signed is somebody that played for Robert Saleh or Brian Daboll. Does Mike Borgonzi not have a personnel department? Scouts and pro personnel that have been studying free agency and every other team in the league the entire year. You know that there are people that have that job. Like your job is the AFC, NFC West. Your job is to know everything about every player on every team in the AFC and NFC West. They hire people to do that. And did they listen to him? Again, everybody they signed, it's a Daboll guy or a Saleh guy. Did Mike Borgonzi, as this horrendous season was going, and after 4 weeks you knew it was over, did he not have his own personnel plan? Like, did he not sit there and say, well, we're going to have to go and make some additions at corner, and so here are the guys I really like at corner, Because, again, the guys he got from corner, Alontae Taylor, Dave Ziegler's guy, and Cordell Flott, Brian Dable's guy. So what's the plan? And I just don't see it. And I'll use John Robinson as an example because John Robinson took a 3-win football team that had the number 1 overall pick, and instead of what we did last year, which was shrug and say, well, this team's bad, and we knew they were going to be bad, they won 9 games his first year as general manager. But his plan was pretty obvious right away. His first free agency, he signed Ben Jones and traded for DeMarco Murray. Then in his first draft, he drafted Jack Conklin, Kevin Dodd, Austin Johnson, and Derrick Henry. You see a theme here? Offensive and defensive lines, running game. That was the plan. And that's how you go from 3 wins to 9 wins. And the plan looks like, let's just go sign a bunch of ex-Jets and a bunch of ex-Giants, and that'll take you from what, 3 wins to 5 wins? 6 wins? The Titans lost their leading receiver from a year ago and replaced him with a tight end who caught 19 passes, which would make sense if they signed the best blocking tight end. For instance, Charlie Kolar from the Ravens, and said, we are committed to running the ball. But as of right now, the Titans don't even have a center or a right guard. So how can I think they're committed to running the ball? They got cornerback figured out before they got center or right guard committed. Corey Curtis and I were texting back and forth today. And Corey Curtis, again, you people, you get too caught up in the value of free agency. He's like, Tyler Linderbaum, that's too much money. Okay? Well, if your plan is to run the ball and play defense and help support the young quarterback, I think you got a better shot with Linderbaum at 27 than you do with Alontae Taylor at 22 and Daniel Bellinger at 8. But no, Linderbaum didn't play for Brian Dable. Can't have him. I guess the Titans have a pro personnel department that doesn't do anything. Because, again, it's not like their scouts went out and suggested, let's sign these guys. It clearly was Dable and Saleh. And you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of what Ran Carthon did 2 years ago. I feel like I'm watching Ran Carthon all over again. Ran Carthon had no plan when it came to building the team in 2024. The Titans had all that money. Remember, Amy Adams-Strunk sat down with Mike Keith, and Mike Keith asked Amy Adams-Strunk, why should Titan fans have faith in the Titans? And Amy Adams-Strunk said, we got a young quarterback, we got Ran Carthon, and we got a bunch of cap space. And I thought, what? We don't know if that young quarterback's any good, by the way. Turns out he's not. But again, Ran Carthon, Brian Callahan, Bill Callahan put their heads together, and let's throw Chad Brinker in there too. And they just threw out a bunch of money without a plan. Well, Bill Callahan likes this guy, so let's sign him. Bill Callahan likes Sadiq Charles. Bill Callahan likes Lloyd Cushenberry. Bill Callahan wants us to trade for Leroy Watson. Bill. Brian Callahan, he likes Chidobe Awuzie. He likes Tyler Boyd. He likes, Brian Callahan wants those guys. Let's go get them. Well, if that's the case, make Bill Callahan the general manager. And yet, this is what I feel like we're looking at here. Is we're looking at Ran Carthon 2.0. He's made the moves that make Twitter happy. Wan'Dale Robinson, John Franklin Myers. And he's going and getting guys the coaches tell him they want. And I said this until it was obvious to everybody else when it came to Ran, and there was a pushback of, oh, you'll see, Jared. You will see. I said, look, maybe I'm wrong. And Rand Carthon is a super general manager, and I just don't see it, and I'm an idiot. But when it comes to Mike Borgonzi, I feel like I'm in the exact same spot where I just don't see it. Overpaying corners? I understand you're going to overpay on day one of free agency. Overpaying a 19-catch tight end $8 million a year? Well, he's a great blocking tight end, Jared. Is he the best blocking tight end? Nope. You're paying $500,000 a catch for Daniel Bellinger. What are we doing here? And so, I'm sorry. Maybe Mike Borgonzi knows what he's doing. But I've got one whole year where I had free agency, I had a draft, I had an executed plan, and now I've got free agency too, and I don't see a coordinated plan. I don't see moves that say we're going for it, but I also don't see moves that say we're rebuilding. I kept saying this. Somebody told me with the Titans, they said the way you want to build a team, Jared, would only make you good for 2 or 3 years, and the way we want to build a team would to be good for 7 or 8 years. And I'm like, well, let's just worry about being good for 2 or 3 years, and then we can worry about 7 or 8 years. But again, this is like that consultant babble that Chad Brinker's, plugged into everybody's brains. You just move the goalpost forward. No. Don't worry about next year. Worry about 8 years from now. But the one thing I'll say is if you're the Titans and you were committed to building a winning football team for this upcoming season, wouldn't you go out and get some better players? I know you spent all that money, but wouldn't you have been in on Hendrickson because he's an all-pro caliber player? Wouldn't you have been in on Linderbaum? Again, TD came on the show on Monday, and TD said, yeah, that Linderbaum price was too high. Price was too high. You got the most money. What does that mean? And it's like, well, we'd rather fill 5 holes than just get a couple of good players. And I'm like, that's not how free agency works for good teams. And it's not like the Titans are being cheap. They're just overpaying the wrong guys. The Titans are overpaying 10 mid-level guys as opposed to overpaying 3 or 4 high-level guys and then waiting a week and underpaying mid-level guys. Corey Curtis said to me, he goes, who would you rather have at corner? Because the Titans jumped out there and they paid Cordell Flott $17 million in year one cash, and they paid Alontae Taylor $21.49 million in year one cash. Who would you rather have? Crazy, but did you know that Roger McCreary actually had a higher PFF grade than both Alontae Taylor and Cordell Flott? He's still out there in free agency. So I don't get it. I just don't see the plan. And maybe there is a plan. They keep telling me there's a plan. When they fired Brian Callahan, I went to the press conference. I asked Borgonzi. I said, you said if you draft a young quarterback, you have to have the plan for the young quarterback. Well, now you've fired the coach. So clearly whatever plan you had, that plan is now changed. So what was the plan? And it was like, well, I think that he may have to learn a new system, but there's a lot that he can develop. There was no plan. That's it. There was no plan. When it looks at free agency right now, it looks like there's no plan. TDG said, how's that Brownlee trade looking? I have heard, like on local radio, people are like, you have to like what the Titans did. They're a better football team today. And I'm like, okay, are they? Yes, they're better than having Daryl. It's better to have a starting caliber corners, and Alontae Taylor is a starting caliber corner. That is better than having Jalen Armour Davis out there. Fine. But are you better to pay $40 million which is basically what you're looking at in year one cash for these two guys? Are you better off paying that than you would have been for keeping Jarvis Brownlee and just re-signing Roger McCreary? I don't think you're that much better with those two guys. I don't think it's like they brought in Patrick Surtain. And so I'm sorry. I feel like I've been very complimentary of Mike Borgonzi up until this point. I like Mike Borgonzi. He comes off as a straight shooter. Again, when I first heard him talk, when I first saw him out there doing his GM thing, I thought to myself, this guy might actually know how to run a football team. And yet, I haven't seen a single well thought out and executed plan by him outside of nailing Chim DK in the 4th round. I mean, they're going to do things that just burn my ass that stupid teams do. They are going to make the assumption that Kevin Winston Jr. can be a starting safety in the NFL. And I'm like, do we even know if Kevin Winston can stay healthy? Because he got hurt his last year in college, and last year he played 10 games and made 6 starts. And you're just going to say, all right, he's ready to start. They're going to make Gunnar Helm a starting tight end. Do we know Gunnar Helm can be a starting tight end in the NFL? No, we do not. Good teams take guys that are day 3 picks that don't necessarily pop right away, but you can tell they're good players, and they work them in. David Long Jr. was worked in. They didn't draft David Long Jr. and say, all right, go stick David Long Jr. out there. He's our starting inside backer. No. David Long Jr. played in all the preseason games, and he flashed, and he was a contributor on special teams, and he sat on the bench, and Jayon Brown popped his shoulder, and they put him in there, and he played well. And they said, you know what? This guy's good. He can be our starting inside backer after he proved it. Amani Hooker, he was a 4th-round draft choice. He played safety. He was the 3rd safety with Kevin Byard and Kenny Vaccaro. And then after 2 years, he had proven he could play in the NFL. Okay, fine, here we go. But again, with the Titans, I don't really see a plan other than, well, we need to go get a starting corner. Brian, who's a good starting corner? Cordell Flott, he's a good starting corner. Okay. How much do we have to pay Cordell Flott? Well, we got to pay him $18 million? Sure, fine. Go ahead. One person says, the plan is obvious. Fix holes with players who have synergies to the coaching staff scheme. How hard is that to understand? So, let me get this straight. And this shows me how many of you do not understand how the NFL works. The Tennessee Titans have a pro personnel department. Pro personnel scouts. People who scout the NFL for this exact moment so that they can put together what's called the Pro Board, which is where they rank every player in the NFL so that a general manager knows right now who the 9th best tight end is. Like the way Floyd used to do it is he had every player in the league ranked so that you could go in his office and you would say, I think I should be the highest paid tight end in the NFL. And he'd turn around and he'd show the board and he'd say, okay, so are you better than Tony Gonzalez? Well, no, I'm not better than Tony Gonzalez. Okay. Are you better than Mark Bruner? Well, no, I'm not better. Are you better than Kyle Brady? Are you better than Shannon Sharp? Are you better than, okay. No, you're paid as the 7th best tight end in the NFL, and you're the 13th best tight end. General managers have to know how good every player on every team is, and they have a pro board, and they have pro scouts that do that. But it seems to me like they either didn't have a pro board, or they just threw out the pro board and said, whoever Brian Dable wants us to sign, we'll sign. Whoever Robert Saleh wants us to sign, we'll sign. So then make Saleh the general manager, or make Dable the general manager. But this idea of like, well, we want guys with synergy with the coaches. Yeah. Didn't you do that with the Callahans? How'd that work out? Cedric says, I wish we could fast forward towards the draft because it looks like they're done in free agency. It does look like they're done on the big stuff. I mean, again, when TDG said the day after the Jermaine Johnson trade, when he said, Jared, this is what they're doing at edge. You know, the idea of signing Trey Hendrickson, they're not doing that. Again, Odafe Owe is $25 million. I do not know if Odafe Owe is $25 million, why you'd want to pay Alontae Taylor $22 million. Edge rushers are more valuable than corners. So I'm just telling you, I am losing faith in Mike Borgonzi. Somebody needs to explain to me what the plan is, because it looks like the plan is that Cam Ward's going to save everybody's ass. That's what it looks like. That Brian Dable is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Cam Ward, the force is so strong within him that those two will bring balance to the force. And that doesn't work for me. That to me is what we would call hope. And hope is not a strategy. And when it comes to Mike Borgonzi, that's what it feels like. MB says, you can't just blanketly rank guys. Certain guys fit well in certain systems and not well in other systems. Look at Vrabel when he played. Richard Sherman was another. Of course, there are scheme fits. You cannot ask Lamar Jackson to run Tom Brady's offense. I get that. At the same time, there are other players and other teams that do things similarly to what you do, and those players can do them. They don't have to just come from the Jets or the Giants. When the Tennessee Titans went out into free agency in 2016, they signed Ben Jones from the Texans. They signed Rashard Matthews from the Dolphins. They brought in guys that had been on other teams, not just one team, not just the offensive coordinator's team, not just the defensive coordinator's team. And that's how you go from 3 wins to 9 wins. One person says, get the defensive end this year, suck again, and get Jeremiah Smith next year. If they suck again, Mike Borgonzi is going to get fired. And I'm not going to be against it because I mean, again, I don't see a plan. And if I don't see a plan after 2 years, you can't do the job. Like, if I can't see growth and progress after 2 years, you can't. I'm not asking for them to win the Super Bowl. I think they should be on the cusp of the playoffs this year. Like, they should win 7 to 9 games. They won't, but I think they should. So, I'm sorry. We'll see. But, again, maybe Brian Dable can get Cam Ward all coached up. One person says, Kevin Byard to the Patriots. I did see this. Well, I think that ends the debate as to who wanted to get rid of Kevin Byard between Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel. My favorite thing was 3 years ago, the Mike Herndons of the world were like, Byard, by all the metrics, is regressing. He's cooked. He's no good anymore. They got a 5th and a 6th round pick. It ended up being Jarvis Brownlee and Jaquan Jackson. Woo! Ended up being that for Kevin Byard. And the Titans were 2-4 at the time when they made that trade. And I'm like, wait a minute. In 2019, they were 2-4, went to the AFC title game. We're not throwing in the towel right now. But again, not my guy, not my picks, so they traded him. Well, it clearly was Rand Carthon that traded him and not Vrabel, because Vrabel just signed him. But I guess Kevin Byard isn't cooked after all, considering that he led the NFL in interceptions last year. Congratulations to Kevin Byard, who was nothing but a great guy and nothing but a great Titan. And I think the Titans fucked him. And I understand, and it's now public knowledge. I knew this at the time. but it's now public knowledge. Kevin Byard's infant son was in the NICU when they traded him, and I just thought that was bullshit. And I understand it's a business, and if they had offered a first-round pick, that would have been one thing, but a fifth and a sixth-round pick? So good for Kevin Byard. Apparently, Chig off the board to the Commanders for a 3-year deal. Whatever. I'm not shedding any tears over Chig, other than the fact that when it comes to Chig, he was your leading receiver last year. One person says, how much faith do you have that the Titans will make 2 good second-round picks in exchange for Maxx Crosby? Well, I don't have a lot of faith because hope is not a strategy, and I have not seen very good strategy out of Mike Borgonzi so far. I've just seen Mike Borgonzi just do things that, like, I see Borgonzi do things to do things. Like, I see Borgonzi this offseason when it comes to free agency. He's just signing guys to sign guys. Well, we need a corner. Go sign a corner. Brian Dable, who should we sign at corner? Because we need a corner. Oh, well, Twitter's told me I need to sign Franklin Myers and Wandale Rock. Go sign them. If Twitter says we need to sign them, go sign them. Even last year, they drafted Cam Ward in the first round. And this was after they did the whole draft, develop, retain. And so Brinker's out there talking about wanting, what was it exactly? 10 picks over the next 3 years in the top 100 and 36 picks over the next 3 years in general. And so you got the first pick. And there is not a generational talent at quarterback in this year's class, talking about last year. And instead of trading back and, hey, we're going to draft, develop, retain, we're going to stockpile picks, we're going to get as many picks as we can, they take the quarterback. So now they've told themselves, we have to trade the second pick because we need more picks. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there at this pizza joint that we're doing the radio show from being like, draft Nick E-Man Worry. They trade the pick. Seattle takes E-Man Worry, and the Titans end up with Femi Oladejo and Kevin Winston. Just does things to do things. What's the plan? I just don't see the plan. William says, I regret it coming to this channel to watch this video. Nothing but bitching. William says, see ya. Again, I can't do what everybody else does to sit there and say, Cordell Flott is a big upgrade over Jalen Armour Davis. Okay. Like, anybody you sign should be better than a guy you pick up off the waiver wire. That's a problem. Good for Brand. Brand says, I agree, Borgonzi looks suspect. Again, whenever this team stinks, everyone's like, well, what do you expect, Jared? They're supposed to stink. And I'm like, nah. They're supposed to get better. And then when they don't, again, who are the guys that are supposed to make you better? Cam Ward. You used a first overall pick on him. He's supposed to make you better. Then he doesn't make you better, and it's let's make as many excuses as we can out there for Cam, which is what's happened around here. Well, then we need to get Cam some help. Well, Cam doesn't have a center right now, and Cam doesn't have a right guard. And today, Corey Curtis was like, I'd rather have Dylan Parham, at whatever money to play center than have Tyler Linderbaum at $27 million. I'm like, so you don't want a top-of-the-league center who is in his prime because that's too much money, but you're cool with overpaying mid-corners? Like, woo, Cody Barton, way to go. Unbelievable. Just, again, I'm trying to figure out how they're going to build this team, and I guess what they've just decided is whoever Robert Saleh and Brian Dable think they should sign, that's what they're going to do. TDG says we can't judge them off of something that hasn't happened yet. The season hasn't started, and we won 3 games last year. But can we judge them off of things that have happened, like how they won 3 games last year? I guess when it comes to me and my frustration, I take March very seriously. This is when you get your team better. March and April, and then right after the draft, That is when you make your football team better. That is when you trade for DeMarco Murray. That is when you sign Ben Jones. That is when you add those pieces that are going to be critical for you to have a competitive football team week in and week out. And how do you win 8 or 9 games in the NFL? You win 8 or 9 games by being competitive week in and week out, and sometimes you find a way to win those games, and sometimes you don't. But that's how you build a competitive football team. And I am tired of people just assuming that Mike Borgonzi can do it. I think the difference between me and other people are I need general managers. Rand Carthon was this way. Mike Borgonzi was this way. Head coaches are this way. I need people to prove to me that they can do the job before I assume that they can do the job. Whereas I think the public views it with the assumption that they can do the job until those guys prove to them that they can't. Does that make any sense? Like, I need Mike Borgonzi to prove to me that he can do the job. And right now, he's been general manager for 1 year, and he improved their 3-win football team by exactly 0 games. The quarterback he drafted by almost every metric was the worst quarterback in the NFL last year. And his answer to fixing this team is a 5'8" slot receiver, a 19-catch tight end, and overpaying average corners. Again, who's the starting center on this team? They don't have one. That's not a position you wing it at. What's the plan? I need Mike Borgonzi to prove to me that he is a good general manager. Not I assume he's a good general manager. Kelsey says, I think the old man would say that Mike Borgonzi is not protecting the team from the coaches. I don't think general managers, I don't think in today's era, general managers understand or maybe empowered to protect the team from the coach. I do wonder how many owners in the NFL have told their head coach, you work for the general manager, because that certainly has not happened here. Tom Sigrin, when he was the chairman of the Predators, Tom Sigrin told me that he told Peter Laviolette, David Poile is your boss, and I will not talk to you about hockey without David Poile in the room. And I heard that, and I knew right away. I'm like, this Tom Sigrin, he knows what the fuck he's doing. And when they were good, who was the chairman? Tom Sigrin. And so I don't know how much, like how empowered Borgonzi is to go to war with Saleh over guys. I don't know, but it feels to me like they're just doing whatever the coach wants. And if that's the case, just go make Robert Saleh the general manager. One person says, I think you're forgetting how bad the Titans were because of how bad the Titans coaching was. But that's okay, because 20-36 Robert Saleh is going to solve those answers. Again, I need you to prove to me that you can do the job. I don't just assume that you can do the job. Remember that you people that are and I think there's a chance that Saleh's a good coach and that the Jets are a clown show, and so put that all on the Jets. But I also think there's a chance Saleh stinks, and that's why he was 20-36. I don't know which one it is. You people are like, Saleh! And I'm like, that's great, but you're also the same people that just assumed Brian Callahan was a better coach than Mike Vrabel. One person said, Jared is mad because Borgonzi didn't sign who he wanted. Well, yeah, because I think the positions he values, like corner, aren't that valuable, and the positions I value, like defensive end and center, matter. This is a rebuild, buddy. Lower expectations. Well, so I don't understand. If you're rebuilding, then you're allowed to be equally as stinky every year. Jake says the plan is to hope and pray that they hit on the draft picks. That's so true. Ding, 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 ding. Borgo doesn't listen to Jared's Twitter. Instead, it's Titans Twitter. I got to tell you, if Mike Borgonzi was here, and I like Mike Borgonzi, and I think I have a decent relationship with Mike Borgonzi. But if Mike Borgonzi was here, I'd tell him the exact same thing I'm saying right now. I am losing faith. I do not understand this plan. Breaking news, Corey Curtis. The Jets are signing former Raiders guard Dylan Parham to a 2-year, $20 million contract. So the guy that, again, TD had heard, hey, they really, really like Parham, and I think Corey Curtis might have heard the same thing, and they were targeting at center. Dylan Parham off the board. Off the board. MB says Jared also wanted Borgonzi to hire Matt Nagy too. Enough said. I didn't want him to hire Matt Nagy. I thought he was going to hire Matt Nagy. My choice, and I kept saying, I don't know any of these guys. My choice was Arthur Smith because I know Arthur Smith's a good coach. And again, when it comes to these guys, I say, you need to prove to me that you know what you're doing. I saw Arthur Smith coach offense for the Titans. It's the best offense I've ever seen. So I know he can coach offense. But Dylan Parham now off the board. So as we sit here today, the Titans still don't have a right guard, and they still don't have a center. Apparently, PK says that Zeitler will return for a 15th season. He and the Titans are sorting through that. And Richard does say this, Happy New League Year. Happy New Year, everybody. Congratulations. We made it. Hopefully, this will be the league year that the Titans figure it out. That's it for us here on the program. Great show today. Like and subscribe. That's right. And tell all your friends, like and subscribe too. And we'll see if Mike Borgonzi can go out and get some better players. Oh, and by the way, let me just say this. Did anybody see what Mark DeRosa did? Mark DeRosa, the manager for Team USA, did an interview yesterday morning saying that Team USA had already punched their ticket to the semifinals and then lost to Italy, and they found out that they hadn't. Yeah, that guy needs to stay on TV. That's it for us. Stillman and Company. Like and subscribe. See everybody tomorrow live. Tomorrow's might be a little different, but see everybody traditionally live 2 o'clock tomorrow.